Brady Donovan with KWNG News, and joining me now is Chris Barden, Republican running for Attorney General. Mr. Barden, thank you for joining me here today. Let's talk a little bit about some of the issues out there, of course, national health care being one of the biggest.
You bet. Well, thank you for having me. You know, we live in the greatest nation in the world, and yet many people, most people actually, do not trust their state or national governments anymore. And the reason is because these governments are violating basic rules of good government. Let me give you some examples. Number one, fiscal responsibility should mean that the government shouldn't spend money that we don't have. Shouldn't be putting burdens of debt on us and our children. Number two, the legislative process should be open and honest and transparent. We shouldn't have backdoor deals and legislative kickbacks, and we shouldn't have people voting for laws they haven't even bothered to read. And then finally, probably the most important rule, I think, is that the law should be within the limits of the Constitution. And of course, we have a law that violates all three of those basic essential rules, and that's called Obamacare.
Yeah, Obamacare is definitely a hot topic. You talked a little bit about not spending money you don't have. And, you know, growing up, isn't that like one of the first things, not even as far as government, but just as far as family, isn't that one of the first things like you're kind of taught growing up is, you know, be responsible with the money you have? You know, when people teach you how to, your mom or dad teaches you how to run a checking account, things like that. Don't spend what you don't have. It seems pretty simple.
Yes, sir. And then now we have this law, this Obamacare law is just going to place trillions of dollars of new debt on us and on our children. And it was passed behind closed doors, legislative kickbacks. The people that passed it admitted they didn't even bother to read the law. And then, of course, the worst thing is that it violates the Constitution in a number of ways, and that it claims a brand new power for the federal government to order you to buy products. This is a power the government's never even tried to have before. And then the other thing is that it violates the independence of the states. It's going to crush the state budgets with all this new health care money that the feds are going to make them pay for things that they haven't wanted to pay for. So for all those reasons, the job of the Attorney General is to challenge a law like that and to defend our state against it. And that's something that I'm looking forward to doing. The current incumbent Attorney General has refused to defend our state. You
talk about, earlier you mentioned that people are losing trust in government. And you talk about, you know, Obamacare kind of getting passed under the table and people who, like you said, admittedly passed this thing without really knowing what was in it. What can be done now that it's passed to change it?
You bet. Well, I think that the challenge will work. I think I've actually already talked to the other attorney generals who have written the lawsuit and who are challenging the law. I think that the Supreme Court will knock it down. That'll take some time. But if people get out and vote in November, I think that the Republican Congress would simply stop the funding for it, and that will stop it fairly quickly.
Well, and I think that, you know, when Obama was elected president, we kind of found out that when the American people want change, they're going to overwhelmingly vote for it. And they did that then, and I know ever since Obamacare has kind of been passed, it's kind of been snowballing the other way for him. We'll have to see, you know, in a couple years where exactly that goes. Talking with Republican Chris Barden, running for Minnesota Attorney General. Mr. Barden, is there anything else you'd like to throw out there, reasons that people should put a check mark next to your name on the ballot?
Well, the other one is that the one person in the state of Minnesota who's most responsible for election integrity is the Attorney General. And I really want to get in there and make sure that everyone has to have a photo ID to vote, and that if there's bad stuff going on in the election, the Attorney General should prosecute those folks and make sure that our votes count.
Yeah, you mentioned the photo ID at the polls, and it seems like such a simple idea. Very simple idea to do, simple to you know, come through with, and could solve so many problems as you know, there's talk about possible voter fraud with all the felons that got away with voting in the last election.
Right, and that's just one type of fraud in just 2 cities that we've looked at. I mean, you would hope that they'd had a full investigation of what went on, and that has not happened yet. So I'll look forward to doing that also.
Talking with Republican Chris Barden, running for Minnesota Attorney General. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you very much, Brady.